You are now tuned into Flipping the Birds, a Philly Sports Network podcast.
What's going on, Eagles fans? Welcome one, welcome all to another episode of Flipping the Birds.
He's into the end zone. Touchdown, Eagles.
It took nearly all night, and when we were losing hope, when Malachi Starks came off the board, when Walter Nolan came off the board, the Eagles somehow, some way still traded up, even though it was over just one pick, and they selected probably one of the better linebackers in the draft, in Jiod Campbell, out of Alabama. But before we get to that, how you guys feeling tonight?
Good. You know, the draft is always a long marathon. I don't know. I don't think I could be paid enough to go to a live draft and just stand there and hear the names. I mean, maybe there's more fanfare that we don't see in between commercial breaks, but you know, kudos to those people who made the trek out to Green Bay and look like a good crowd. But yeah, you know, first night's always long. You're anxiously awaiting for a pick, and seemingly yet another year and a really talented prospect falls in the lap of Howie Roseman and the Eagles.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mike.
I thought I think it's nice to have pick that late, right? Because if you pick in the top 5, you usually know the pick's going to be. It's been talked about ad nauseum, and you kind of know who it's going to be. When you're in the middle, it's more of a scramble. You're like, I don't know what the heck's going to happen. When you're just sitting at 32 and you're the champions of the world, it's like it's all good. Like whatever happens is going to happen. And that board, the way that board fell, I thought it fell in their favor the whole night.
It was interesting because I know we all had our own separate picks, right? Like, you know, some guys were the Walter Nolan guy, the Malachi Starks, which I was ranting about all night. But to see you know, a move like this where for the first time since 1979, the Eagles selected a linebacker in the first round, and it's like I was talking to Zach before the podcast. It's the perfect move. It's the needed chess piece in that defense. And you know, you have question marks on like a Nakobe Dean who can't really stay healthy. Jeremiah Trotter, you know, is coming in the second season. What to expect of him? Zach Bond was perfectly aligned with the Eagles defense and just flourished perfectly. But Jihaad Campbell, I mean, coming in as a rookie, like how much stronger does he actually make this defense going into the 2025 season?
I mean, I think he makes it strong right off the bat. I mean, he's an Alabama player. We know what the Crimson do and the Crimson Tide and what they're able to produce at the NFL level. And I think this was more so of a Vic Fangio pick. Like, this seems like Vic was like, hey, Howie, I can't believe this guy's still here. Get him. And I think it also solidifies the fact because they just moved up one spot. Now, I don't know if they're worried that the Chiefs were going to get him or if they're worried that somebody else was going to jump in front of the Chiefs. But to me, it seems like once they realized that Campbell was on the board still, they lost out on Starks, who I personally wanted to see the Eagles get. I had that in the mock roundtable that they would trade up in the mid-20s to get Starks. I mean, I think this is a really good pick. You mentioned Nakobe Dean. We don't know his timetable yet to return. You look at the depth chart, you've got Jeremiah Trotter Jr. at linebacker and Zach Bond, as you mentioned. Zach Bond was an amazing story. I would hope that there's not a huge regression, but, I mean, we have to assume there's going to be a little drop-off maybe. I mean, the guy played out of his mind. And, again, nothing taken away from Zach Bond. He's an amazing human being, but you would think he might come down to earth a little bit. So you bring in a hungry kid and you watch him run through that tunnel and slap the bird logo and then, you know, takes the mic and says, hey, we got to win another freaking Super Bowl. I mean, seems like this kid's pretty pumped up, and I think he's going to be a great fit.
Yeah, I got to go back and do some more research on him, but I was just reading some scouting reports and then some other text threads I'm on where I guess he's more of a rush linebacker, they're saying. So he played some edge. So I I think we're getting a pass rusher and a linebacker in one, which is perfect. And then I definitely think Fangio signed off on this pick or was urgent for this pick. But to answer the question why they traded up, I'm really not sure why they traded up, because the Chiefs were projected to take Josh Simmons in a bunch of mock drafts that I watched. And if they knew they weren't going to take Josh Simmons, I don't know why they would trade up there. But I'm glad they did. This seems like a steal to me. I have no qualms with this pick at all.
I mean, apparently they were trying to trade up for him since the 22 pick with the Los Angeles Chargers. So it seemed like the urgency was there. Was like they see this kid falling. Like this is apparently, like Ian Rappaport was saying, that this was their guy. Meanwhile, we're all on couches thinking that Starks is the guy. Apparently, Campbell was the cream of the crop for them, which is something new, right? We're used to Howie building within the trenches. Like we're thinking about Walter Nolan. We're thinking about an offensive lineman here and there that they can actually plug and play. It's a new. I guess it's a new era in Philadelphia where Howie Roseman is just truly picking best player available. Are you guys at all surprised by this pick, being that it is not in the trenches per se?
I am, but I think there's still some decent depth in the second round where they can get an interior defensive lineman. Walter Nolan, Nolan would have been nice, but I think that they realize that they can still find a serviceable D tackle, nose tackle, whatever it may be in this second day tomorrow with, a handful of picks still. So I'm a little surprised because, again, historically, as you mentioned, they don't draft linebackers. First one since 1979. So I think that in itself is surprising. And if you aren't familiar with Campbell, I know Mike had mentioned, we were mentioning off here, we're reading up a little bit more on him because I don't think any of us expected this. This is a scouting report that I just found, but first bullet is explosive first step, jumps off the tape, watch him knife through the A gap against LSU, leaving their protection scheme in shambles, multifaceted weapon who creates matchup problems, spent 20 plus snaps each at Mike, Will, and Edge. So, I mean, they could cross train him here. And Vic Fangio could have a field day with this kid and be like, okay, hey, we're going to line you up here. We're going to line you up here. We're going to run stunts to get you free. So I think maybe they really like the versatility of Campbell more so than maybe some of the remaining defensive linemen that were on the board.
Plus Alabama, right? I mean, we got this Alabama pipeline going here now. So, there's no negatives to this pick from what I can see.
I mean, sorry, Chris, I didn't mean to, or Mike, I didn't mean to interrupt, but that RAS score, which Anthony DeBona did a great piece on for PSN, but I just saw on Twitter that Campbell scored a 9.88 out of a possible 10. So, I mean, this dude is freakishly athletic. That ranked 41 out of over 3,200 linebackers from 1987 to 2025. So it kind of puts in context over decades where this kid ranks. So, if that carries any weight, they've got a legitimate player here.
It's weird. I'm still a little bit baffled by it just because, again, it's a linebacker to move that we didn't expect at all. But it's like, how long have we waited for the Eagles to have a legit linebacker group? Like, Zach Bond is not a scrub. I know he played out of his mind last year. I know he played, it was one of those seasons where it's just kind of like, it's hard to, replicate that season once again. But he's still going to be, pretty well. He's still going to be a pretty good player. But now you have not only one of them, you have two of them. Nakobe Dean comes back later in the year, however they plug him in, whatever case may be. It can get very creative with this defense now, from Cooper DeJean to Nakobe to Jihaad now. And even Zach Bond, who they've used in the blitz and in the defense this season, I'm a little shocked by it. I'm not gonna lie. I'm still a little baffled by that. They took a linebacker as opposed to a defensive lineman.
Yeah, well, there was that one. Was it John Clark? I've been reading so many different reports and rumors today. There's that one that was shared in one of these chats where they said they were looking at defensive line, offensive line, or a
Mhm.
certain linebacker. So now we know who that certain linebacker was. So they obviously had this guy highlighted and earmarked, and when the board started falling the way it did, it probably was almost a no-brainer when it got down to that point.
It seemed like it was, and it's good to see that, I think one thing we said multiple times this season is like the offense is set in place. Like you have all the money in the world set in the offense, but now you have this defense where you have a Quinion Mitchell for another four seasons under a rookie contract. You have Jalen Carter coming up for a contract extension. Jordan Davis, Nolan Smith as well coming for contract extensions. But they're building this defense where it's kind of like it's a revolving door with young talent in and out. And offense, they have their core, their nucleus that just works. At some point, and I hate to ask this question, right? Do you think this kind of method will backfire on them, where they're going to lose a lot more talent than they are able to keep?
I mean, that's something that you're gonna kind of have to worry when the time comes. When you cross that bridge. I mean, I don't think anybody's going to be complaining if Howie keeps hitting home runs in the draft, and how are we going to pay for Campbell now in 4 years if he's a stud this upcoming season? I mean, at the end of the day, you want to win championships. And if Howie and his scouting department and everybody involved in this process continue to find high quality players wherever they're drafting, then, eventually you're going to lose some guys and you're going to win some and lose some. And that's the name of the game. And that's how sports works. It's a business at the end of the day. So, I think that's a good point. We were kind of talking about that on Twitter about Jordan Davis. Will the Eagles pick up that 5th-year option?
I don't know if you want to bring that back up.
I know I got some heat for that tonight, but anyway, I wasn't saying don't re-sign Jordan Davis. I'm just saying I don't think the Eagles are going to pick up that 5th option. But what I'm going at this is the Eagles might not do that. And if Jordan Davis doesn't play up to par, or they don't think he's worth that $13 million price tag, then you got to roll the dice and gamble. And that's what Howie and the Eagles are going to have to do moving forward. But right now you just have to focus on who you have. And right now they have a really good young nucleus on defense. I was very questionable about how that defense was going to play coming into last season. I thought that was going to be their Achilles heel. I thought the offense was going to have to carry them. And boy, I was wrong. Vic Fangio deserves a lot of credit.
Yeah, I don't think we can start worrying about 4 years into the future and salary cap and all that stuff. The way the league is structured right now is you want to get as much talent as you can, because those second contracts aren't. I don't. You could probably look this up. I'm not going to do it at this hour, but like how many second contracts come from the team that drafted the guy? It used to be all the time, but I feel like it's not guaranteed anymore because the numbers on these contracts are so ridiculous. People are just bouncing around to different teams now. So I wouldn't even worry about that. The only thing, and we're talking about Nakobe Dean, he's coming up on that next contract extension, and he's really struggled with health issues. So I know it sounds like Campbell's a totally different type of player, so I don't want to compare them together. But if they're listed at linebacker and they have some depth there, then they have some leverage there in contract negotiations too, probably.
So if you're just joining us right now, the Eagles traded up with the Chiefs. They traded the 32nd overall pick as well as the 164th for the 31st, and they drafted Jihaad Campbell. Jihaad Campbell on several big boards ranking. Daniel Jeremiah, he was the 12th ranked prospect. PFF, 13th ranked prospect. The Ringer, 11th ranked prospect. Todd McShay, the 11th ranked prospect. Steal of the draft, or is the truth going to come out at some point later on, where it's kind of like the Eagles, like Nakobe Dean, he fell down because of injuries. I know they mentioned in the comments that Schefter mentioned that there were several injuries that Jihaad has dealt with throughout college. But it seems like, nonetheless, the Eagles have been hitting on these kind of guys for the longest time right now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the injury is as scary as some people might think, just because I trust Howie and everybody involved in the research that they put into these players. Health-wise, off the field-wise, I think the Eagles arguably are the best team at deciding, what factors can really be a red flag. So, but back to your question, I think it's going to be too soon to see if it's a steal. But, I mean, you just rattle off those rankings. They got a top 15 prospect per consensus at pick 31. Like, it happened again. Like, I swear, I thought this year the rest of the league was going to do everything possible to make sure that this didn't happen. And as soon I was watching the NFL Network broadcast, as soon as they went back from break, Rich Eisen was like in disbelief that the Eagles got Jihaad Campbell. The way his tone was in his voice, and again, they just said this happened again. The Eagles get another steal in the draft. So, yeah, I think he could be one of them. If you're a big Shedeur Sanders fan, you're probably going to say Sanders as a day 2 pick will be the biggest deal if he ends up lighting it up and can continue to throw with that accuracy that he showed. I'm not the biggest Sanders believer, but I know there's a lot of people out there that are. Not that he's a bad player. I'm surprised he didn't go in the first round, but I think it's too early, but definitely you have to put him up as maybe a top 3 steal pick for sure, just from the jump.
Yeah, and there's this. Have you seen the hit he put on Jackson Dart?
No,
That's making the rounds right now. He leveled him in a game, like his helmet flies off, just jacked him up. It's incredible. It's incredible.
Well, he had like 116 tackles I saw, which set an Alabama single season record, 5th in the SEC or something. So, I mean, this kid can hit, he can tackle. And you get him coach up with Vic Fangio. We saw what Vic did. We thought that defense was too leaky. They were undisciplined. After week 4, they turned the corner. And, I mean, obviously with Mitchell and DeJean, 2 rookies leading the way, I don't think they're scared of playing young guys anymore.
So Howie Roseman and Alexi Ariana are at the presser right now, and they said Jiod Campbell was a top 10 player on their board. So Roseman saying it was an easy pick, which again, I mean, it had all of us baffled because we saw the reports from Jordan Schultz and James Palmer that the Eagles were trying to trade up, and the thought process was it's safety because the linebacker is just not a thing for Philadelphia. Now, them selecting a linebacker now in the first round, how do you feel like this sets the precedent for the later rounds, where it's like, what direction should they go in next?
I mean, I think they should still try and address safety at some point. I do think they go interior defensive lineman. One of the tight ends could be around too. I mean, I think a tight end pick could come first and then they trade Goddard, or they trade Goddard and then obviously they'll go tight end. But, there's a couple of tight ends that are still out there. I know Taylor from LSU, he was a monster, and some guys – had him as a possibility at 32, depending on how it fell. He could be really good value at a day 2 selection. So I think they still go and attack some positional needs, especially going linebacker. I mean, I don't think anybody really saw that coming, obviously. So, those needs are still there.
Yeah, and the more I read about Campbell, I just keep reading stuff about him rushing the quarterback, and he was originally an edge recruit. So I don't know where they're going to play him. Probably, like we said earlier, Fangio is probably just going to set him loose as like a weapon to use. But the way that it sounds, he plays a lot of edge. So I don't know that they are in a need to get another edge right away. So they may use the second round to get a Mason Taylor tight end, or I like Xavier Watts from Notre Dame. I don't know. He might go earlier than they. He might be gone by the time they pick again. I don't know. But I could see safety or tight end being the next priority need for them in the second round.
Who's one of your sleeper picks in the next round? I know a lot of us have been high on the idea of Mason Taylor, but it feels like it's not a foregone conclusion that they'll draft the tight end until they get rid of Dallas Goedert, which we could be wrong. Like, you could let Dallas Goedert play his last year of his contract, keep Mason Taylor right there in the wings. But entering the second round, who do you guys feel like the Eagles could zero in on, or who do you feel like is your sleeper pick of the round?
I mean, I kind of like Shamar Turner from Texas A&M. He was my second round pick for our roundtable mock. 6'3", 290-pound D lineman that played at A&M. pretty solid up the middle, really strong. Had 10.5 sacks last year in his final year, and 10.5 tackles for a loss and 6 sacks. He's shown his ability to penetrate. He's super strong, really good upper body strength, but he has flashed some inconsistencies. Was penalized a little bit, but again, you get the coaching staff on the defensive side coaching him up. He could be a nice weapon for them as well if he's around.
Yeah, I still think I know they love to get offensive linemen. I still think that they're probably, if they could find someone they like in the second round, like a tackle to replace Lane, like I've been saying, I think that would be appealing to them. I'm just looking at who's available, like a Charles Grant from William & Mary or someone like that. If they're going to do it that early, I don't know.
A lot of people have been talking about Charles Grant possibly in the second. How do you feel about that kind of pick?
I think it could be a good one. I'm not against it. And like Mike said, he's been talked about, and I forget if Anthony said they had a visit with him or not. I thought he was on their list of top 30 visits.
What'd you say, Mike?
I think he was on their visit list, so it would make sense from that standpoint. But they could go anywhere they want.
I'm gonna bring Zach in because I've been texting Zach for the past 5 minutes, and he looks frozen on his end. I'm a little concerned.
Right, if I'm not responding, it means I'm working.
How do you feel about the pick, Zach?
Right. So coming into this is not, I think, where any of us expected Howie Roseman to go. But as soon as the pick was made, it began to make all the sense in the world. Right? When you think about what Jiod Campbell brings to the game of football, what he brings to a Vic Fangio defense, it's not that different in the sense of what a Zach Bond or even what a Cooper DeJean brings, right? And that's versatility, right? So you have a guy who, he's able to play as that inside linebacker. He's able to play with his hand in the dirt. He grew up playing with his hand in the dirt. This is somebody who I think that they're going to flex all over the field. I think they're going to move him around. I think they're going to shake him up. They're going to make him that heir to Zach Bond. They're preparing. We talk about Philadelphia being a quarterback factory. I think Philadelphia is looking just to be a certified championship factory in the years moving forward. They're going to be looking at these positions years down the road with intent on dominating not just this year, not just next year, but the year after as well, right? So, they're looking at their linebacking core. They have some interesting young pieces. Nakobe Dean's up for contract, potentially extension. His free agency is going to be pretty tricky, and based on his level of play last year, you're intrigued, but of course his season ended with injuries once again. So you don't know what's going to happen with Nakobe Dean. You like the idea of Jeremiah Trotter Jr. really popping off the sheet this year. You don't know what that's quite going to look like, and this is just a different type of linebacker, frankly, than Trot Jr., right? So you look at the future of linebacker for Philadelphia, maybe Trot's a part of that. Zach Bond will be certainly for the next 2-3 years. But now you have Jihaad Campbell, who potentially can be in Philadelphia for the next 7 to 10 as a dominant linebacker that they can move all over the field.
It seems like everybody's gushing about this pick, but I feel like at the same time we're all kind of just taken away by this pick just because it was so unexpected. I was talking to Mike and Corey about the second round and what they think, who their sleeper in the second round, and who they feel like the Eagles could zero in on the second round. Do you have anybody you have a gut feeling about for the second round for the Eagles?
Yeah, a gut feeling. Gut feeling is always tough with Howie because gut feeling. Where did that get us today? But when you start looking, I expect them to look at the cornerback market somewhere where I was thinking they could potentially go even with this pick today. So obviously there's a few corners who made it. Will Johnson's just sliding due to that injury, so he can potentially continue to go even further. Trey Amos out of Mississippi is another guy who I've had some interest in, and I believe that he was one of the corners who had a visit with the Eagles. But one name that I would definitely look out for if we're talking about the cornerback market is Siobhan Revelle out of East Carolina, who is just an athletic freak, 6'3", just pure athlete. PFF called him an athletic alien, right? This is a guy who I think can be molded into a potential stud cornerback on the outside for years to come. Maybe give Keely Ringo that first year on the outside. I think they want to keep Cooper inside of the slot, not because of any doubt of his ability to play outside, but his just sheer dominance playing inside the slot, right? So maybe you go with a little bit more versatile defense where you bump him out, bump him back in, depending on what the look is from the offense. But I think there's definitely the option to go corner in that second round. But if you're looking past that, and this is where it's going to be really interesting to see exactly who continues to fall, because I think we've seen a number of names fall so far, and we saw initially the tight ends fall a little bit further than I think that we were expecting. So a name's been connected to Philadelphia's Mason Taylor, of course, tight end at LSU. But then there's one name who if I'm hoping against hope, the guy that I want to see fall down to the Eagles, it's Darius Alexander out of Toledo. Just defensive lineman, interior defensive lineman, but you can move him around, another chess piece, a real Milton Williams type, right? And so if there's anyone who I'm hoping is going to be there when the Eagles pick, and who knows, they traded up from 32 to 31. I heard you guys talking about, why did they make that trade? Frankly, we're not going to know, other than the fact that they knew for sure that they liked that guy at 31. They liked Jihaad Campbell at 31. And that's all that matters at the end of the day. They have an excess of picks. They moved up, without giving up the future in order to get their guy. This is a guy who a lot of people expected to be drafted right around the late teens to early 20s at certain points throughout, at least the last few weeks leading up to the draft. So they went up and they got their guy. They can absolutely do that on day 2 as well. So that's where I'm hoping to see they possibly go for a guy like a Darius Alexander. But to be honest with you, there's still so much talent in the second round. Nick Gordon making it to the second round is huge. You have another athletic freak in Oluwafemi Oladejo out of UCLA. There's interior guard talent like Tate Ratledge. I mean, there's just so much to choose from. It's such a feast. And for the Eagles, who have so many picks, granted they're not all first, second round picks, but to have this kind of war chest, it gives you so much more flexibility when you're looking to make this move on day 2.
Yeah, and you mentioned, Zach, like the trade, they basically just gave up a 5th round pick, to get a top 15 consensus player. I mean, I would do that trade 10 out of 10 times. So, it was a little confusing, as you mentioned, just going up one spot, but in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't hurt the Eagles one iota. So, while you were talking, I was listening and just looking at more stuff on Campbell. I just saw that video of him blowing up Jackson Dart that Mike mentioned, and how he spoke to the media for about 12 minutes. And he said that he can play pretty much everywhere. He can play and rush the passer. He can play inside. So, it's been a versatile pick here. And we talked about it. I think that's a big reason of Vic Fangio. I think he's just come in and he's just saying, hey, these are the guys I want. I mean, look what he did with Huff. He did not care that they spent a boatload of money to get Huff over here. He's like, he can't play or he won't fit in our scheme, and he didn't play. So I think Fangio bringing that old school, no nonsense attitude really helps these young guys as well.
Yeah, the more I read about him, the more impressed I am. So I can't wait to see him at training camp. I mean, he played defensive end and wide receiver in high school. Played for Pepper Johnson. Remember him from the Giants? That was one of his high school coaches. And then he was recruited by Clemson, Florida, Georgia, and Texas A&M, and he chose Alabama. So, like, these are the big boys. These are the Ivy Leagues of the football world that are recruiting you, and I love it.
To think there was a time where Howie wouldn't draft guys with mileage on them, or guys that came out of big schools, and all of a sudden that's changed, where you got a Devontae Smith, a Landon Dickerson, a Jordan Davis, N'Kobe Dean, Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith. Goddamn, so many Georgia guys. Keely Ringo, like all these guys that play in big schools. And now, once again, we got another Alabama kid to come into Philadelphia. It seems like, this has been the recipe for success. And just to kind of piggyback off your opinions of this, like, what do you guys feel like was the big change for Howie to make this kind of move, where it's allowed him to accept the fact that guys with mileage in college are the way to go, as opposed to going for a guy like J.J. Arthega-Whiteside or Jalen Reagor?
I think he just stopped trying to be the smartest guy in the room and in the draft. I think he kind of got in his own way a little bit. Obviously I'm not in Howie's brain, but just the picks and seeing the talent that they chose over who they could have had, it was just beyond head scratching. And I think, in credit to him, I think he probably took a step back and said, my process is not right. What's going on? And he's also relying on other people, I'm sure. There's some GMs like Jerry Jones who, I missed the first half of the draft because I was covering Marsh's rehab game, but the guy that they took, I don't think is a highly regarded guy in terms of the grading and rating. I mean, he's a solid lineman, but I didn't see too many people in wow over the Cowboys pick, and Jerry Jones can't get out of his own way. So, the Falcons kind of seem to be in that boat as well. But I think Howie has just understood what needs to be done. He takes a lot of opinions and then he forms the decisions based on what he's been told and what's presented to him. And I think that's what makes a great general manager is it's his show, but there's other actors and actresses in it that can make it even better.
I think you hit the nail on the head when you said he was trying to outsmart himself. I think that's what he was doing. I remember hearing reports of him just staying up late and watching all these like Pac-10, Pac-12 games and trying to find like obscure under the radar talent when just go to some SEC games and these are the best kids in the country. You don't really need to overthink it. And I think the Rager pick, he might never admit it, or maybe he will. He has admitted to making mistakes in the past. I think that one probably was the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak, where it was like, all right, we're not doing this anymore. We're just going to pick the best people, and we want good character guys too in this locker room.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at that Jalen Rager pick the very next year, that's when you look at Devontae Smith. That's when you look at Landon Dickerson, even, the first two picks in that next draft. And you're immediately going double Bama. And I think that really kind of just showed everything that you both have already said, is that he just stopped overthinking it, and that's kind of been the issue over the years, with Howie, is that clearly, very smart mind as a general manager. And, there's times where he thought too much and outdid himself with his own thinking. And, then he learned that sometimes, there's genius in simplicity. And so utilizing tried and true powerhouse schools, Alabama, obviously being one of the biggest schools, Georgia, of course, who's been one of the most talented schools in college football over the past 5 years, are continuing to pull from these institutions. They've had a lot of great success, and yeah, I think that's going to continue going on forward. Now they're just not going to draft anyone just because they play for an Alabama, a Michigan, Georgia, whomever. But to look at these players who they've played on these big stages for these big schools, and they exhibit the on and off the field characteristics that they're looking for in a player, yeah, they're going to go ahead and they're going to have a high grade on that player. And in this situation, that's exactly what you had with Jihaad Campbell. And now you're also able to bring a local guy back home. I mean, I'm over here sitting, over Deptford area in Jersey. He grew up like 15 minutes from me. Like that's how close he was to Philly. So to be able to bring someone back to the area too, obviously is a great story. We've seen that before, with some Philadelphia area players who are able to come back to play for the Eagles. And, there's a certain pride playing for Philadelphia, but there's that much greater a pride when it's your local team that you come back to play for.
It's definitely gonna be good to see how this pick produces later on, as well as what's gonna happen next in the later rounds. I feel like there's not much more to be said when it comes to Jiod Campbell. I think it all took us back a bit because we weren't expecting this. I mean, like I said, we were pounding the table for somebody in the trenches or possibly a safety, which obviously didn't happen. It was a very, very interesting run on defensive linemen towards the end of the draft, and then obviously Malachi Starks was the one outlier of the safety group. But like you mentioned before, you got Trey Amos in the second round. You have Will Johnson, which I'm I'm wary of going for a guy like Will Johnson just because I feel like Sidney Jones still gives me the heebie-jeebies after what happened to him when they selected him in the first round. Are you guys against kind of that, that kind of move where, a kid like Will Johnson has, the top skill set needed to be a top player in the NFL, but has a lingering injury that could, kind of keep him sidelined for quite a bit?
I mean, I think it depends on how legit the injury is and how serious it is. I kind of think I think Amos is a little bit better, maybe. I liked him as well. I know Zach had mentioned him out of Ole Miss. But who knows? I think whatever they do, I trust, if that makes sense. I think over the last 3 years now, they haven't given fans a reason not to trust the picks. And can that run come to an end and to a screeching halt? Sure. It could come to an end tomorrow, depending on what they pick. But right now, they have a really good thing working. So, I mean, if they think Johnson's the best guy available and he keeps sliding down and the injury's not as serious, or they think that he can not have a setback with it, then yeah, why not? Go for the best player available at a position you're seeking.
Yeah, I'd have to agree in terms of their evaluation. It really just depends on who else is there. There is that little bit that's like, hey, first guy we drafted already is dealing with a little bit of the injury bug. Do we double down on believing that they can overcome that? That's a little bit risky. Obviously, you mentioned the Sidney Jones connection in years past. That could be a little bit problematic as well. But it's a lot of it's going to depend on how great they feel that need is at corner. But at the end of the day, Howie Roseman's always been a best player available guy. They're going to consider the need of the roster a little bit, but if there's someone who just measures up that much higher on their big board, whether it's a wide receiver like Alec Ayomenor or whoever else it could be, a Landon Jackson out of Arkansas, there's so many players still to see, what falls in the second round that. Really, we just can't say for certain. Even a guy like a Kevin Winston Jr., another injured player, who potentially solves a need there in that secondary. So, just a lot to be seen, and a lot of excitement still to be had. And I'd say a successful first night. Here's hope for another exciting night too.
Yeah, I don't think the Eagles are ever afraid to, if they have a guy high rated and he's got injury concerns. As long as they're not major concerns, they've done their homework and they're not just going to take a guy. Like, I know Sidney Jones we mentioned, but for every Sidney Jones, you got like a Landon Dickerson. That turned out to be a steal where they got him. So I wouldn't be concerned about them shying away from a guy just because he might have a little bit of an injury concern. If they think he's going to overcome it and be a top tier cornerback, I think they'll take him.
All right. Final thoughts of the first round, heading into the second round. Tomorrow, there will be another stream with Liam and a couple of guys as well. But like I said, final thoughts for you guys. And then the night for the Eagles.
Overall, the first round?
Yeah.
The Giants are doing giant things. Did not expect Jackson Dart to be a first-round pick today.
Falcons gave up a lot just to
again, where I mentioned GMs that can't get out of their own way. Giants, Falcons, Cowboys. I mean, these teams are just. I'm not saying they're handing the NFC on a silver platter to the Eagles, but I mean they're just making really head-scratching moves. I mean, the Falcons gave up a first-round pick for next year already for that move. So. Is just a crazy haul. That and I guess Sanders not going first round. Reading and seeing on Twitter.
Are you guys really surprised by that?
Again, I'm not that big of a Sanders guy, but I feel like all the hype surrounding him, he was accurate. He did put up some numbers with a shoddy O-line at Colorado. I thought for sure a QB needing team was going to have to take them just out of necessity. again, the Giants, when they traded back in, I texted a couple of my Giant fans. I'm like, oh, you ready for Sanders to be your next QB? Because I thought that's where they might go after seeing him fall. So, I'm surprised, but not for Sanders. But I think generally speaking, the national media and fans are surprised that he did not get picked.
Yeah, I was shocked that the Steelers didn't take him. I mean, they absolutely need a quarterback. And again, I'm not the biggest fan of Sanders. I think he's got a lot to prove. But at 21, and you need a quarterback, I was shocked they didn't take him there. I think the Browns will probably take him tomorrow, though. That would make sense.
Yeah, I think what surprised me the most, not so much that Shedeur Sanders wasn't drafted in the first round, but to kind of piggyback off of Mike, the Pittsburgh Steelers did not go quarterback in this first round. And the biggest question is they don't have a second-round pick. So, if you were to say, well, maybe they go ahead and they thought maybe Jackson Dart was going to be available on day 2, or maybe they go for Jalen Milroe in the second round, I can understand it. But that, to me, that's a big question mark. But seeing the Giants draft Jackson Dart, especially seeing the Eagles then draft Jihaad Campbell, that was fantastic for me because he's going to have another 10 years if Jackson Dart lasts that long in New York, he's going to have another 10 years of just blowing up him in the backfield. So that was really exciting to see that connection there. But, looking up and down the draft, the Browns, I think, made a hell of a deal moving out of the second pick. Obviously, Travis Hunter is an immense talent. But to be able to go down, continue to build your defense. Cleveland is so far from contending that to build through the trenches and bring in a guy like Mason Graham makes sense. On top of all that draft compensation, I think they looked at the evaluation charts and Cleveland got more than twice as much what they gave up in that deal, in projected value. So definitely a great move for Cleveland. And otherwise, I was a little surprised. Looking at who fell into that second round. I wasn't surprised to see Mike Green fall, but I was a little bit surprised to see some of these corners fall. Trey Amos was the guy that I had mentioned earlier. And then Nick Scordon, I was also surprised to see the edge rusher out of Texas A&M. Just curious as to what exactly is behind that fall, and is there an opportunity for Philadelphia to move up on day 2, which, again, with the amount of picks they have over the next couple of years, you can't rule Philadelphia out of moving, especially considering how little they had to give up to move up in round 1 tonight.
Fun fact before we close, Mike mentioned the high school he played at. I don't know if you mentioned how close it was, but I just saw that Campbell's High School in Jersey, 23 minutes away from the NovaCare complex. So I know we talked about him being
an Eagles fan as well, because he commented on the picture of the tweet of the Eagles drafting Devontae Smith, saying that we needed that. So
yeah, it's just a cool dynamic, we saw that with Hassan Reddick for a little while, and it's always a feel good story to play close to home. But this kid could be electric. So another first round talent and steal for Howie Roseman.
I don't know how the NFL lets him get away with it, but I want to say, we appreciate you guys for staying up with us today. And, be sure to tune in tomorrow evening where LJ and a couple of the guys will also take over for day 2 of the NFL draft. But until then, my name is Brian Cameron alongside Zach Chavalella, Mike Greger, Corey Naito, and we'll see you guys. Well, some of us will see you tomorrow. I'm going to bed.
Go Birds, baby.
See, now my mouse doesn't want to work.
I want you to talk more.
Apparently so. Let's see. Here we go.
Flip.